Attack on Titan is a series that has never been afraid of complex morality. It would be incredibly difficult to loosely throw around words like hero or villain without cheapening the characters we attach them to. This has worked to the tremendous benefit of the series. I think that the moral ambiguity is one of the things that brings these characters to life. Just like us, they have to make decisions based on the facts available to them, and just like us, they don't always get it right. Sometimes they're impulsive, emotional, or even in denial. That's just one aspect of Isayama's immaculate character writing, but it is a rather big one. These characters that we love have gone through so much development that they can be nearly unrecognizable at the beginning of a rewatch or a reread. We've come a very long way from the days of, I'm going to kill all the Titans and avenge my mom. But for all the time that we've spent with Mikasa, Armin, Eren, and the rest, there's one character who sticks out to me above all others. One shattered, complex man. Reiner Braun. A character whose psyche has been shaped by its own fragmentation. His compassion and his willpower pitted against the desire to give in to the cruel world he inhabits. But to understand what makes this character so compelling, I believe we should begin in, of all places, the beginning. Making now the perfect time to warn you, this video will contain spoilers for the entirety of Attack on Titan at the time of this recording. But don't worry, I'll give another spoiler warning before transitioning into any manga-only content. So to all the anime-onlys out there, don't worry, I've got you covered. So, without further ado, let's dive in, shall we? Being born an Eldian in Marley means being dealt a bad hand. But Reiner started off a bit worse than most. As the bastard son of a Marleyan and an Eldian, Reiner spent his entire childhood working, striving to please a father who would never acknowledge his existence, and trying to help a mother who could never escape the confines of their heritage. From the time that he was just a little boy, Reiner was taught that he was a descendant of the devil, on his worst day, an affront to all mankind, and on his best, a living weapon. He found a small glimpse of hope in the latter. After all, as an Eldian, the only way he could prove himself was as a warrior, and maybe if he could just claim one of those little red armbands, he could have the family he'd always longed for. Of course, this was an idealistic delusion. His father would never claim him. His being chosen as the Armored Titan was a fluke, a manipulation by Marcel to save his brother, a fact Poco and Annie rarely hesitated to remind him of. However, in all this, Reiner found a dream, a goal, something that would drive him for years to come. The Paradis operation would be his chance to be a hero, a good Eldian, someone his mother and father could be proud of, and all he would have to do was empty that island of its devils, and reclaim the power that they had stolen away. So, with Marcel, Annie, and Bertolt, he set off for Paradis, where tragedy soon struck Reiner again. As the young warriors were set upon by Ymir in her pure Titan form, Reiner froze in fear, leaving Marcel the only of the four brave enough to act. And there, as his friend and idol was devoured in his place, all Reiner could muster the courage to do was run. Annie would of course mercilessly beat him for his cowardice and his carelessness, though perhaps this was merely projection, as she and Bertolt surely shared the blame in standing by unable to save Marcel. In this moment, as his companions suggest they turn back towards certain death, Reiner reaches his breaking point. In this moment, Reiner develops a trait that will define his character going forward. He dons his armor, a mental guard against the stress and trauma he cannot deal with. Because while his Titan is literally his armor, Reiner's multiple personalities are his figurative armor. I would label two main psyches dwelling within Reiner. This is the dawn of the identity that will torment him for the rest of his time on Paradis. Merciless, focused, and driven only by his desire to complete the mission. We'll refer to this one as the Warrior. It's the Warrior who breaks Wall Maria, who drives Annie and Bertolt forward against seemingly impossible odds, and who commits nearly every atrocity we watch Reiner commit. This is an idealized version of Reiner, given the worldview he possessed at the time. This Reiner who would kill the devils, who would take Marcel's place, and who would make his mother proud. Of course, this would be all well and good if it weren't for one small problem. Indoctrination. As a warrior candidate and as an Eldian living in Marley, Reiner's worldview has been hammered into him since he was a child. The island devils are wicked, evil creatures. Not because they are, but rather because that's what Reiner has always known. That was what he was raised to believe, and as a warrior, it is his duty to make up for his people's sins. The viewer knows this is a lie, a false pretense to justify the Eldians' exploitation as weapons by Marley, but to a young Reiner, it was gospel. The reality that we are indoctrinated to believe is rarely that. Reality. So what is Reiner to do when he finds there are no devils on that island? Another layer. More armor. As Reiner infiltrated the island's military and met those he was sworn to kill, he dons a new persona. This one caring, protective, and spurred on by Marcel's sacrifice, willing to lay down his life with nice suicidal enthusiasm. We'll refer to this one as the soldier, a distinction that Reiner himself subconsciously makes, as the swap between the two will often be subtly implied by his alternating use of the words warrior or soldier. When in his Eldian soldier persona, he will almost never refer to himself or his allies as warriors, only really breaking from this trend when he's on the brink, dancing between the two personalities. The soldier acts as a big brother, he saves his comrades, he offers a sense of hope and security. This is the compassionate Reiner who mentors Eren, who saves Connie, and loves Krista. Though, ironically, the target of his affection is, like him, a fabrication. Likewise, it is the ruthless side of Reiner, the warrior, who kills Marco, who drives the mission forward with knife-fanatical ferocity, and who opposes our protagonist from mid-Season 2 to the end of Season 3. This Reiner maintains his usual tenacity, but tempers it with an efficient cruelty. Reiner frequently displays the ability to swap between these personas almost at will, and yet the two seem to remain completely unaware of each other, meaning perhaps he never really makes a conscious decision to shift between the two. He simply changes his armor subconsciously to fit whatever situation he may find himself in. Most of these alternations are discreet, things you would only notice if you knew what to look for. The information, the hints, they're all right there in front of us the entire time, but they are so expertly hidden in plain sight that most viewers will get no more than the faint sense that something may be off on their first watch. With all that in mind, let's take a look at perhaps the most blatant example of Reiner's shifting personalities. The Battle of Trost is a turning point in the series. This arc solidifies a core aspect of Attack on Titan's tone. The brutality. It is this arc that undoubtedly shook many characters to their core, killed even more, and while certain characters may have suffered a grimmer fate than he, no one who died in this town has had their presence loom over the plot, quite like Marco. Why are you in such a rush? We haven't even had a chance to talk this over. I could make an entire video discussing the importance of these two lines. Even to the current episode of the anime, this simple plea, Marco's last words, are just as relevant to the plot as when he said them. Marco's death was traumatic for Reiner, or at least half of Reiner. When Marco discovers the warrior's plan, they are left with no choice but to kill him, and while Annie and Bertolt are certainly distraught at this happening, it is Reiner's split consciousness that causes it to affect him so intensely. This was the first time we, the viewer, see Reiner's composure break. Our calm, stoic big brother becomes frantic. The soldier is subdued by the warrior. And when the soldier snaps back, he is unable to deal with the actions of the warrior. This scene is incredibly telling in regard to Reiner's state of mind, and it perfectly establishes the dynamic between his split personalities. When in Paradis, he prefers to be the soldier, to alienate himself from his mission and the horrid things he's inflicted upon his now friends. But when the mission rears its ugly head, and he finds himself in a situation the soldier cannot handle, the warrior comes out to do the one thing it exists to do: complete the mission. And once the warrior is done working with ruthless efficiency, the soldier is left to deal with the aftermath of his actions. We, the viewer, can see how conflicted Reiner is, even if he remains unaware of it. And moreover, this switch can seemingly happen in an instant. In this very scene, Reiner switches so quickly that when the soldier regains control, he's unable to cope with his own actions. This puts him at a distinct disadvantage, as while we can clearly see Annie and Bertolt are disturbed, Reiner is seemingly incapacitated. This is a crippling aspect of his coping mechanism. Where Annie and Bertolt are constantly exposed to the horrid things they are forced to do, Reiner does not have the luxury of desensitization. Because of his split personalities, Reiner is thrown in and out of the deep end at the drop of a hat. He lives in a constant state of imbalance because of that word I mentioned earlier: indoctrination. The process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. That is the definition of the word indoctrination. It is the force by which dictators, fascists, racists, and cult leaders convince their followers and their children that their ideologies, no matter how flawed, are unwaveringly correct. In Reiner's case, he was indoctrinated to believe that his people are inherently evil, descendants of the devil, and the only chance that he has to pay for the sins of his ancestors is to kill the island devils. The unfortunate aspect of this is something we see explored even more through Gabby in the 4th season in the manga, but that is a video for another day. Indoctrination is not easy to break. Just because it has become apparent that one has been lied to does not necessarily make it easy to change one's way of thinking. Additionally, having your worldview shattered is a life-changing experience, and one that often requires a great deal of coping. I think this aspect of Reiner's character arc speaks to me as much as it does because I can attest to it from personal experience. Without revealing too much, I was raised in a small rural town with very evangelical right-wing views. These were views I blindly accepted against all opposition, to the point of denial until I was nearly 19 years old. And when it all started to come unraveled, I had to spend months dealing with the fact that my worldview, the only thing I had ever known, was simply incorrect. This is a big deal for an adult. Reiner was forced to cope with the fact that he had slaughtered innocent people at the age of 12 on the back of an ideology he would soon discover is complete bullshit. To me, this struggle of Reiner's is one of the most sublime aspects of Attack on Titan. But like most struggles, it eventually reaches a climax. A climax that occurs in the midst of the Clash of the Titans arc, pleasingly enough in the episode titled Warrior. Following his reunion with the Scouts after that whole
"Hey yo, the Titans here! The Titans?"
fiasco, and the discovery that Ymir is the Jaw Titan, Reiner and Bertolt are given a unique opportunity. The two shifters find themselves able to reclaim the Attack Titan, Founding Titan, and Jaw Titan in one decisive strike. This is a situation that is rather critical. If they play their cards right here, they could complete the mission. So given that, I would wager one could surmise which persona elects to drive Reiner for this encounter. The warrior, to Bertolt's dismay, lays all that he can on the line. He reveals that they are the Armored and Colossal Titans, he shares what details of their mission he is at liberty to discuss with Eren, and offers him a simple deal. Eren and the warriors will retreat with Ymir, and in exchange, they will no longer attack the walls. Given the state of Eren's character in mid-season 2, this goes over about as well as you'd expect. The two manage to subdue Eren, capture Ymir, and make off to rendezvous with Zeke, stopping for a break in the forest of giant trees as they wait for their Titan stamina to return. During the ensuing back and forth that they have with Ymir and Eren, we see Reiner break down. As Ymir starts digging into him, we find subtle hints that Reiner might not be fully aware of what he's doing, or even why he's doing it, droning on about his duty as a soldier and his future with Krista. When Eren begins to yell at Reiner, he seems unsure of why Eren is angry with him. Ymir, who upon a second watch is fantastic in this scene, continues to drill Reiner, beckoning Bertolt to chime in. This causes Bertolt to look to Reiner and say, "Reiner, you're not a soldier, remember? You and I, we're warriors." This is where things all come tumbling down for Reiner. As we briefly flash back to Marco's death from Reiner's perspective, Reiner immediately breaks down to tears. At this juncture, Ymir tells Eren that she's figured it out. And while I cannot play this lovely scene for you in its entirety, I will do my best to perform her assessment passably, as it is likely the most correct and concise description of Reiner that could be given. I thought it was strange. Why would the guy who broke the wall risk his life to save Connie? Everything he does is contradictory, but he doesn't realize it himself. I don't know why he ended up like this, but probably he was originally a warrior whose goal was to break the wall. But after pretending to be a soldier for so long, he lost sight of who he was and couldn't tell which one was real. No, unable to bear the weight of his sins, he convinced himself he was a soldier, protecting the wall to maintain emotional balance within his own heart. And in the end, he believed it. As a result, his heart was split, and his memories broken. An astute conclusion to draw. However, this seems to affect Reiner perhaps even more than Ymir had intended. As Reiner collects himself, it becomes apparent that he has made the swap back to the warrior. Only something is different. He, at the very least, seems to have a heightened awareness of his situation. He uses Ymir's attachment to Krista to try and persuade her to their side, but perhaps this is merely a sign of the internal conflict that Ymir has caused. You see, I believe this to be a significant turning point for Reiner's character. This is the moment in which he takes the first steps to becoming himself. I will pose that in this scene we witness the beginning of the soldiers' counterattack. You see, as the two personas developed independently of each other, they are both valid but separate aspects of Reiner. So, knowing what we know going forward, I would argue that the true Reiner is the sum of these two halves. Reiner's struggle going forward is one of reaching his center for the first time. As while the warrior is certainly in charge for the remainder of his time in Paradis, we still see hints that the soldier is steadily pushing him back. This is evident when he argues about the prospect of rescuing Annie with Zeke, the man who decides what the mission entails, or even in the face of certain death when he hands Ymir's letter off to Hanji. But where does this struggle leave us? This war being waged inside of Reiner is one that could have easily killed anyone lacking Reiner's resolve. This is evident in that it almost kills Reiner, but to what end? To answer that question, we'll have to take a little trip over to Marley. The Reiner that we meet at the beginning of the final season is at the lowest point in his life. He has spent the past 4 years fighting a war for a country he harbors no love for. He has witnessed his people being used as weapons of war, all the while being herded into camps like livestock whose only purpose is to make more weapons. He is forced to mentor young Eldians so that they can either become cannon fodder or suffer the same fate as he and his fellow warriors, all the while being tormented both by Poco Galliard and his own mind regarding the loss of Marcel, Annie, and Bertolt. This Reiner, more so than even the fragmented man who we knew on Paradis, is truly broken. And so it is with a gun in his mouth that he finds something he had not known since he had a mission to fixate on, a purpose. The warrior candidates, Falco, Gabby, Udo, and Zofia, would give Reiner the willpower to move forward. In a roundabout way, they are the family that Reiner never had. But as the cruel world would have it, Reiner has yet to face his darkest hour. Reiner's confrontation with Eren at the onset of the attack on Liberio is beautiful. In fact, I would say in the entire series, there are only 2 scenes I can genuinely say I enjoy more. One being a manga spoiler, and the other being Erwin's charge, which is quite possibly my favorite moment in all of fiction. But more importantly than any of that, I genuinely believe this to be Reiner's ultimate test. His actions here will set in motion the chain of events that will define his character moving forward. As we are treated to the duality of Eren and Reiner, it becomes clear just how much Eren has grown, while Reiner remains trapped in the past. Where Eren has moved forward towards his goal, Reiner is still running from himself. He breaks down, he begs Eren to kill him, he gives up. Eren, at his most intimidating, asks Reiner why he broke the wall all those years ago, and in doing so realizes that, in his words, they are the same. Reiner wanted to be a hero, and save the world, just as Eren now wants to save his world from Reiner's. After all, they were born that way. All they can do is keep moving forward until their enemies are destroyed. This is without a doubt that darkest hour I mentioned, and yet as he lays waiting for death to take him, something happens. As Reiner hears the distant voices of Gabby and Falco calling out to him, begging him to save them and Poco, he is forced to make a choice. Originally, in this moment, I was going to say, the soldier conquers the warrior, but I no longer feel that's accurate. The Reiner who lashes out at Eren and saves Poco is not the soldier or the warrior. Rather, it is the culmination of the struggle between the two. In this moment, for the first time, we see Reiner whole, the sum of his parts. In the depths of his despair, he was able to settle the feud within himself. The impossible tenacity of the warrior, the compassion and understanding of the soldier. They are finally at peace. When he asks himself, why won't they let me die in peace? It would seem, at least to me, that Reiner realizes that perhaps that is no longer what he wants. At least, not right now. In finding this purpose, larger than himself, Reiner, in a sense, found himself. Because going forward, Reiner is no longer being dragged along out of guilt or fear. He is simply a man who is fighting for those he loves. In the latest episode, when Reiner arrives in Shiganshina, the perspective is flipped from the one we are used to, with Reiner seeming just and honest, while Eren is shrouded in mystery. Eren's motivations are unclear, but his behavior is deplorable at best. He's going along with a plan that will end the Eldian race, and the one thing, the one equal and opposite standing in his way, is Reiner. For the first time, Reiner is transparent. He is simply a man who is prepared to fight and die for the only loved ones he has left, while Eren is now what Reiner once was, an enigma beyond our understanding. This is a testament to the growth of each of these characters. To refer to that antiquated black and white sense of morality I mentioned in the beginning, we may well refer to Reiner as the hero who's here to stop the bad guys and save the world. But as we know, Attack on Titan is rarely so straightforward, and Eren has yet to show his hand. Reiner and his character arc are a celebration of the human will, but also a warning against the dangers of indoctrination and unhealthy coping mechanisms. He is a twist and a mystery, hiding in plain sight, and ultimately the cathartic tale of a fragmented man made whole again, and a staunch reminder that the you of yesterday needn't define the you of today. But as we all know, his story isn't over yet. So, for the anime-onlys who don't want the rest of the series spoiled for them, thank you. Please, before you go, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and please consider subscribing for more videos like this one. As this video is uploading, I am already typing the script for a similar video about Levi, so if that sounds like something you'd like to see, please join me next time. And if you'd like to see my previous video about my criticisms of Sword Art Online, please check the link in the description. Now, for all the manga readers, in the face of the literal apocalypse, Isayama continues to hammer home the character development of this final arc. I was tingly when Reiner joined Hanji and Company's little suicide mission to save the world. Reiner and John share an incredible scene in which John finally hears Marco's dying words. And as I hinted at earlier, John points out that they illustrate the core conflict between the Alliance and the Jaegerists. The conversation devolves into a physical altercation, but by morning, John tells Reiner that he can't forgive him. And Reiner accepts that, as he understands his actions are unforgivable. But that is not the point. Reiner has come to terms with them. He no longer needs to struggle. He no longer needs his armor to protect him. Watching Reiner and the others fight against staggering odds has been a joy, so regardless of what you thought of the ending, I feel the integrity of Reiner's character stands firm. He has not escaped his past, as that is impossible, but rather he has come to terms with it and himself. His ultimate reunion, in which his mother realizes that all she ever truly wanted was her son back, is the perfect conclusion to what's been one of the most compelling character arcs of recent memory. So, as we wind down, thank you all for watching. I am, as I said, typing the script for the Levi video as this one goes up. So if you'd like to see that, please consider subscribing for more, and do leave a like if you enjoyed. And until next time,